All right, welcome back, family. Come on in. So today we have Shifu Loretta, and I always want to mess up your last name, so I'm not going to actually. But anyway, Shifu Loretta is one of the Tai Chi women in the world that I have met, and not very many. And I tell you what, she just stood out to me in such a phenomenal way when I met her. And once I started to learn more about her and what she had done and what she's still doing and what she could offer, it was like, we got to get together on our little talk show and have her come on here and just show people how Tai Chi is not just a martial art, not that it's not a great thing as a martial art, but that there's so much more to it. And with her being so directly tied, very close to I say the origin of the culture, because she was the assistant of a very well-known Tai Chi master, and she'll tell you about that as well. She got some gems that she experienced that some of us may not have a clue in regards to that. So here we have it today, Shifu Loretta.
I find your following the master is very intriguing. Okay. Would you equate that apprenticeship to what they did in the old days, or is it something that you learned? This was just a way to learn the art.
What happened was one day my teacher said, are you really serious about this? And if I pass on and this and that, will you remember these principles? Will you really be serious about your Tai Chi?
Mm.
And I said, yes. And he said, it's very serious. So he said, we're going to do Bai Shi. So what he did was he brought me into his private practice studio. And there he had a sort of drawing, I guess you would call it, a scroll of Tan San Feng, who was considered the founder of Tai Chi, the father of Tai Chi. At least that's one theory in Chinese thought, and that's the one that my teacher followed. And so it's not like worship, but it's like a promise. So it's like as if the person was still alive, and we don't care about space and time, right? We make a promise. It's like you're making a promise to a person. So I would, I did the incense, and then we did, you would like an orange or some fruit. You like show that you're offering. It's just like you would invite a person in, and you're very serious when you want to make a promise to them. And so I took that promise, and what am I representing to myself and theoretically to any students I will get in the future? What am I representing? So that was really the promise I made. So it wasn't even just so much to my teacher, but it was more to the idea of what he represented and what he was trying to instill in me and what I try to instill in students too, and how he helped me, what things he would say and do, and how he would teach me, and how he would show me there was so many ways I could help myself or learn things, and then to kind of pass that on.
I imagine that you just carry his legacy on to your students as well.
Yeah. I teach them what he taught me and how he taught me. And one of his things, which I really appreciate, is to teach people how to think for themselves, to teach people to question. So a lot of that was usually not welcome in the old styles. You wouldn't question your teacher. Now, you do it with respect, of course. You don't hassle them or put them on the spot. But I always tell my students, test things, try things, question things, ask me questions. If you go and you learn something from someone else, that's fine. You have my blessings. Try to see how it fits with the principles. Is it working? Does it make sense? Do you feel anything different? What are you noticing? So this was something that he really instilled in me. And I found that it was not only just efficacious, but I think it's necessary for any kind of growth or progress in the arts.
Your bio, you said you had an upcoming podcast, or you're thinking about doing a podcast. How do you
Yeah,
want to structure that?
I haven't started it. I'm still putting it together because I have to hire someone to help me put all the logistics into place
Mm.
for the website, etc. and I'm still forming that out, but it should be this year. I can't guarantee when. I don't want to make a promise I can't keep. It's going to be all called Arcana Tea House, and it's really an offshoot from the Tai Chi. So while building my school, and I want that to have its own development, I want to have something that's a broader, that goes from that idea that my teacher had to always research things and question things and look at all different things. So back in Chinese Tang Dynasty, Ming Dynasty, and these other dynasties, when they would have their tea houses, the people would gather, especially the men, they would gather and the scholars would gather and people would gather and have these wonderful discussions, or they'd play a game of Wei Qi, which is Go, basically. And they would talk about philosophy or new things or thoughts or philosophy or all this kind of just over, sort of like what the old fashioned coffee houses used to be, right? And I kind of want to bring that online. So Gongfu Cha, which is a Chinese tea method, it's like tea ceremony, but it's really more like a method. And segue that into maybe interviewing people about very interesting topics. And that can range all the way from science and health to anti-aging, to martial arts, to Tai Chi, to Taoism, all these just things that people normally don't talk about mainstream. I would think that's very fascinating. And then it can go online where people can meet, just like we're doing now. I would have these open tea house, basically, where people could do what we're doing and converse with each other. And several people could go into an online room and hang out, and there's going to be message boards and things like that. So I'm for that, to just kind of keep people's minds open. And of course, my Tai Chi is not 100% going to dominate that. It's more like I'm going to let the people bring their thoughts, but it's just going to be on topics that we normally maybe don't hear about or get into. And yeah, I think that the Taoist thought will be a little bit what colors it.
My students heard a rumor that the Tai Chi Gala was happening. Is
I
it
am
rumor
trying.
or is it the planning?
Oh my gosh. I really want to put it back on. The problem is, and what people don't understand is, it's a huge financial risk for me. Huge. Because when you get a space, you have to guarantee them certain things. And you have to put down all this down payment that you're not going to get back if you can't deliver. So I would be doing it down here where I live now, more down south, probably around Tennessee, Georgia area. But I have to make connections, and I have to research if people would even want to come down here, because this is kind of a new territory for me. But I'm just, I'm not going to be running around like I used to. I'm like 55 years old. I just don't want to be running up to Albany, running down here, running all over the highway. And I just really don't want to do that. And then where do I put my dog and all this kind of thing? So I want to do it, but I am not quite in the position yet where I can take that kind of a risk. So I'm trying to get it soon, but I can't guarantee you anything, unfortunately.